This is the second lab of the OpenTelemetry training. In this lab, we will add custom attributes, log events, and span to the automatic instrumentation that we have done previously. In order to do this, we will follow all the steps described here. As a summary, we will create attributes at the environment level. Then we will create custom attributes directly in the code of your application. We will add also some log events and create some specific span into this application. You know, this is really useful and recommended to do this kind of custom addition on top of the auto-instrumentation, because auto-instrumentation only gives you technical attributes. But if you want to add your business attributes, if you want to add any kind of key values that is important for you for dashboards, for querying it, for grouping your transaction based on it, this should be done with manual instrumentation. As this is a dev environment, you will see that our updates in the code will be taken automatically into account when we save the file. And we will retest your application in order to see the different results in the log files. So let's go to the instruction. So first of all, as you can see here, we will see how to add custom attributes directly using the environment variables. Environment variables is an easy place to put new attributes that don't depend on your code. Typically, the environment settings like the hostname, like if it is a prod, dev, or test environment, or simply the service name and service.version that we will use here. So I will just copy these values, this example here, and I will go to my Docker Compose file and I will update it with this. So I go back to my project, I go to the Docker Compose, I go to the environment settings for my service container, and I'd add the hotel resource attributes. The service name will be service, and the version will be 2.0 also. And I will do the same for my web container. Please note that if you want to add the environment where you're running onto, you can also use a variable for this, but it is recommended to use the OpenTelemetry semantics, like service name and service.version here are following exactly the semantics of the OpenTelemetry specification, so that you don't create, so that you reuse what is existing instead of creating your own here. So this is for creating resource attributes directly at the environment level. Now, if I want also to add resource attributes to my code, because the values depend on the code. So first, I will have to import the OpenTelemetry library in my code, and here we will do it only for the web service. So if I go to my web service and to the source code of the web service, I've got some constant here, and I will create the OpenTelemetry constants. So the ones that use the API in order to get the context, the existing context, and the existing span, and the tracer when I will need to create a new span. Then to add a log event or to add an attribute is really similar. You just have to get the active context, get the active span from this context, and then on this active span, you will just set the attribute and its value. So we will do this in order to capture all the arguments that are used in our web application calls. So I copy the code here. I go again to my web application. I go in the main file, and I go to the get where we get the request and response from the web. You can see here that we capture the number of loop argument and the weather argument. And I will just copy and paste my OpenTelemetry code here so that we capture the active span, and we add to this active span directly the two attributes, number of loop and weather. I save my code, and we have, and last step to do is to add the log events. So the log events again, we can go to the main function for API get, and we can add this create here event. If at one point of time you are lost because of the amount of code that you need to do, or you want to get some help, be aware that you've got a solution folder on top of the project, and in this solution folder you've got all the solution files for this exercise. And typically, if you look at the specific solution for this workshop, you will have to select the good version. So typically version 0 is the initial version of the file, version 2 is after manual instrumentation, version 3 is for the lab, the third lab, etc., etc. So here I just need to get to my index file, to my API get data, and here I can look and I can add my log event here. The recommended approach for log events is to create at least one log event each time you've got a payload that you send to an API, so that you can load this payload in the log events. And for each exception also, it is recommended to add a log event in order to put this exception in the span. And last instruction is to change the generate word function so that for each item in the loop for this generate work, we will create a specific span, and we will add an event to this span so that we know in which number in the loop we are. So I copy this generate work code, and I go to this function in my code. So currently the generate work is doing nothing except logging, doing something. So I copy and replace the full function. What it will do now, it will start a new span. It will add an event to the span. And each time you start a span, please don't forget, you should stop it, you should end it, or you will have a span waiting for an end in your code, and it will not be very good. I save this change again, and now we can test the function. So I go to my browser. I will do it with weather equals sun, for example, first. Then weather equal rain. And then weather equal snow. And loop equals 10. So I have sent several transactions. Now, if I go to my trace, you can see here, for example, that you've got the log events for the loop, doing something loop 9, doing something loop 8, 7, 6, etc. So all the spans with the specific parents have been created. You can see that they've got the same parents, so they are attached all to the root span. If I go in again on top of it, and if I go to this URL calling snow, I can see my attribute weather snow is added, and the number of loop is added also. So all my requirements, my new custom attributes, have been taken into account, and I can see it for other requests above if I want, for the sun and the rain. That's done for lab number 2.